Hey there, how you doing? So this is a forecast for Thursday, 27th of August. Now, 27th of August is featuring Mercury Cazimi, Moon into Pisces, and two moon aspects, and they would be the moon in a conjunction to the North Node, and also a sextile to Chiron. Now, I'm going to be talking about the moon flows just in a little while. I want to start with the Cazimi, and I know I mentioned it yesterday because I do think it's helpful to know it's coming up. The Cazimi is a time when the planet that is in the Cazimi takes on what appears to be like super strength. Now, that's probably not an official term, but I just want to describe the Cazimi for you so you get to understand it. And apologies if you've heard this one before. So, if you think of the planets in the sky and what we have been told about them in terms of how strong they are, etc., the sun, by all accounts, is huge and hot, and it takes up a lot of room, and it's very, very noticeable. It is the central part of our solar system, from what we've been told, and it takes up space. If you think of it, the sun rules Leo. Leo is known as being the king of the jungle, and there's something quite regal about the sign of Leo. It expects to be central, and it's the same with the sun. Now, as planets get closer to the sun, and every planet is going to get in a conjunction with the sun every single year. And the moon actually comes into a conjunction with the sun 13 times a year when it makes a new moon. But when a planet comes into the area of the sun, initially it gets rendered a little bit less relevant because the sun is taking up space in that part of your chart. And so you don't really notice Mercury creeping in. It seems insignificant. And the closer and closer and closer it gets to the sun, the more insignificant it appears to be. In fact, there's a term, combustion. So like Mercury, when it's close to the sun, but not in a Cazimi, and within 8 degrees of the sun, he's known as being combust. And so combust planets don't tend to be regarded by traditional astrologers in quite the same way as planets that are not in a combust position. You're at a party and there's a really prominent person, and everyone's swooning around this person, listening to their big old story. They're full of importance, and other people are just like milling around, and they're in the shadows. Nobody really notices them. But then all of a sudden the sun clocks them and grabs them and say, "Hey, you guys, have you met this person here?" And all of a sudden that person is showcased. The sun almost gives that person authority. And so this is what I really think is, as a planet gets really close to the sun, it's actually known as being in the heart of the sun. Then when it's in the heart of the sun, it's like the sun is giving it some authority. It's giving it some welly. It's really heating it up so that we really get the message of that planet. Now, it just so happens this time it's Mercury. Now, what does Mercury represent? Well, he represents communication. He represents ideas coming to us, the flow. He also represents working and moving around. Like, by working, I'm talking about emails, those kind of flows, but also trading, buying and selling. If you've got something to move and shift, then Mercury is your guy. So on the day of the Cazimi, it's a time when you could have a real brainwave, because the Mercury function is stronger. Now, if you'd like to see where this Cazimi could be affecting you, then just check out my 5-minute astrology video from yesterday. It was about Mercury Cazimi inspirations, and that will guide you through how to locate it in your chart and to how to interpret it. But we're not just talking about Mercury Cazimi here, because on the day of the Mercury Cazimi, we're also just a nanosecond away from coming into the energy of this partial lunar eclipse. And the partial lunar eclipse, this is going to be the last eclipse of 2026. And of course, when we're coming into the time of the full moon, we often start to feel a little bit panicked or overwhelmed, or a little bit just like there's too much, too full. And of course, this fullness is going to be happening in the sign of Pisces. So what's really going on here, I think, is over the course of the day, we've been actually over the course of the week, we've been in a real Virgo phase. And, with the Virgo energy, we've been really thinking in terms of our identities in a practical way. We've been probably quite busy. We've been tidying things up. We've been trying to understand things. But it's interesting because when this when this lunar eclipse comes in, all bets are off. The moon's going to be in the sign of Pisces, the least differentiated or busy sign of the zodiac. Now, if you're a Pisces, please forgive me. I don't mean to imply that Pisces don't get up to anything, but the juxtaposition between the sign of Virgo, which is really wanting to improve and be in a story, versus Pisces, which is about literally being in the story, but not necessarily being an active participant. Like the Pisces energy is sitting with things, feeling things, examining things, and not really examining them too deeply. It's more about like, does this feel right? What am I feeling in my waters right now? So after a very motivated and busy week, we're coming up to a time that feels high stress because it's right before a full moon and it's an eclipse, but that the answer that we might get might not be clear. It might not be full of clarity. We're coming into a moment, in fact, where our next step might not be so neatly revealed to us. This is, I think Pisces is a sign that really sort of describes the natural magic around. And so we're, I think, being prompted and primed for a coming back into a different kind of reality. It almost feels, it feels like we're being primed for a new reality that the usual rules don't apply for. So it's interesting, isn't it, that we've been so busy this week with all this Virgo energy, and then the Mercury Cazimi just before the moon goes into Pisces. And the moon's going to make a conjunction to the North Node, which is what we would expect, because an eclipse, an eclipsed moon is always very close to a node, either the South Node or the North Node. And this is the one we're moving towards. And with eclipses as well, I always think it's interesting to see which eclipse the moon is connecting to. The last eclipse that we had on the 12th of August was where the sun and the moon, the total solar eclipse, was connecting to the South Node, revealing that something was coming to an end in that area of life, that we were about to change, some identity. I'm going to say identity here because Leo is very much about sovereignty and taking up space and being noticed. And then Jupiter is such an enormous planet. It has such gravitas and magnitude that, Jupiter in Leo is a kind of a personality. It's like we, at the last eclipse, were feeling into the personality that we've become. And since then, I think we've been maybe disassembling it a little bit, or especially as the sun and Mercury have gone into oppositions with the North Node, it feels like we're realizing this identity is coming to an end. But that's not to say that there's not something else that's meaningful and that's coming forwards. So yeah, I just think this partial lunar eclipse is going to bring us a shape of what's to come, and it might not make rational sense. It really might not make rational sense at all. Yeah, Pisces and the North Node. It's I think describing that we're going into a future that we can't quite hold on to, we can't quite make out, but we just have to go to with that feeling. Obviously, I'm going to talk more about it tomorrow when I'm going to look at the Sabian symbols for this partial lunar eclipse. I'm also going to look at some of the aspects. I'm also going to look at some of the asteroids that are playing out with this particular configuration. And on Saturday, I'm going to be posting a 12 sign forecast to take you from this eclipse to the next eclipse, which is on the 6th of February. So it's like a 6-month forecast about the eclipses and how they're moving us forwards. It's almost like we're crossing over into a new way of life. Now, I did mention, if you listened to my previous eclipse blueprint, which I released a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about this particular eclipse as being the crossing. I really see that the patterns that have been building this year, including the boat or the basket, have been moving us towards a new reality. And I think the last eclipse was really showing us what we're working really hard on. This one is breaking up some of those planets, breaking up some of that information, because this eclipse is working with Uranus. And so there's an element of moving from one stage of life to another. So yeah, the next couple of days I'm going to be releasing a lot to give you a lot of context. The moon in a sextile to Chiron, because whatever is happening on Thursday, the 27th, the moon working with Chiron, I think is indicating that our direction is helpful. It's there to heal us. It's not there to hinder us. It's there because we're meant to be following something at the moment. We're meant to be caring for ourselves. We are meant to be seeing ourselves in a different way. And so that's the big adventure that I think we're on and have been on really since July is lots of things about our life are shifting. We're recognizing what we've done well. We're recognizing what we want to do more of, but there's something else. There's something else that's appearing. And I think healing's a big part of it. It's like the next step involves our participation in healing, maybe. I don't know, just putting it out there. Now, I've launched a new product that you might have heard about, you might have seen on my channel. It's 5-minute astrology. If you're new to astrology, this is a chance to learn from scratch. And it's not in a formulaic way, it's in a very intuitive way. It's just 5 minutes a day. And I'm going to link it into the current transits. So you're working on things within your chart that have meaning to what's going on right now. And so just to prompt you, if you're wondering about full moons and eclipses, seeing as we're going into a huge eclipse just in a day's time, then stick around. I'm going to follow up with this next one, which is going to look at the oppositions in your chart and how to decode them. So anyway, that wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for joining me and catch you real soon. Lots of love. Bye for now.